Good. So today actually would like, that is my ambition, to finish the book of Esther because I realized that if we push it till the 25th, it's like, I don't know, it feels so far away. And I know after this week, you guys will be busy with finals and you're not going to want to have another course on Esther. So I want to do as much as I can in the first hour where everyone is here. And I want to just go over a little bit. I know some of you have to go. That's fine. You can listen to the rest of the recording, but I'm going to try and put as much as possible in the class today. And that will be it, right? That will be our last day. I'm going to miss you guys like crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do without you. So, good. So let's get in it right away because so much to talk about. Okay, so I'm just going to go very quickly over some of your comments. Just going to go over the questions and then I'm going to answer them actually in the lecture. So a bunch of you noticed the sackcloth, right? Why she is going through. So the sackcloth, when you wear sackcloth, this is a ritual normally of mourning, when you mourn someone who's died, right? So why, right? Some of you are asking, why is she wearing? Nobody's died, right? Why is she going through this ritual, right? So we're going to talk about that. A couple of you were asking, why was Haman invited to the banquet? Yes, we're going to talk about that too. Um, why two banquets? Also, we're going to look at her. I think Morales was the closest in thinking about how tactical Esther is being. And there is something tactical in the way that she creates two banquets instead of one. And we'll talk about that too. Let's see. Yes, Alim is still wondering where the sacred marriage is, right? So we'll go over that. And then yes, very good stage on the why she didn't go to the king for 30 days. What does this mean? Why is the author? So really good questions, right? Which I'll be addressing throughout. And I want to go straight into it because we have a lot to cover. So today we'll go over two things. We'll talk about actually, this is the third section, right? Number one was the feminism, right? Number two was the harem, life in the harem. Now we're entering what I call the section called the making of a queen. And then we'll go to the point four, the seduction of Ahasuerus. I'll just pronounce it like I want to. And then very briefly, right at the end, cosmic, right, redemption. Okay, so that's the plan for today. All right, so the making of a queen, right? We were complaining, right, so far at the way that Queen Esther was, kind of not a very interesting personality. I mean, we know why, right? She's kind of weak, submissive, passive. I mean, there are certainly reasons for that. We talked about how she must have been scared and this is a traumatic situation, right? But, right, she's not yet ready for the sacred marriage, right? So just to address Alim, right, there is no sacred marriage yet, right? Sleeping with the king doesn't mean there's been a sacred marriage, right? Because she has not yet come to her full individuation as a woman. Today we're going to see that moment, right, where she rises and really becomes or steps into her role as a queen. And so the text is very interesting, right? When the text mentions 30 days have passed, right? Remember when Mordechai comes to see her and says, you need to go see the king. And she tells him, I can't, right? 30 days have passed and he hasn't called me. What does this mean? Has anybody wondered? I mean, as a queen, right, doesn't she have free access, right? 30 days where she hasn't been called means that she still has, even though she has been crowned queen, she still has the status of a concubine. This is what happens to concubines. They're sent off to the harem, and when the king wants, calls for them, right? And so when the author is saying 30 days have passed, right, he's hinting to the fact that even though she's been crowned queen, she's still treated like a concubine in many ways. And she's, in a way, surrendering to that role as a concubine. She's accepting this status, right? She doesn't dispute it, right? Like maybe Queen Vashti, right? So, so we have to know this, right? She, at that point, even though she's crowned queen, she's still not psychologically risen to the level of a queen, right? Something will happen that will make her do that, but she's not yet there, right? So when, of course, she finally decides, right, to do something about the situation, I want to look a little bit into the shift, because this is really what marks the transition. And as women, it is interesting to study what is the process of her transformation, and to learn how we can see as women in our lives the same process going on at times, right? Recognize it, right? So I want to focus here on the 3 days of prayer and fasting, right? This is interesting to me. Um, we saw another 3 days before. And let's remember, right? 3 days of prayer and fasting. Fasting, you don't eat, and wearing sackcloth, right? This ritual, what is it? Um, what's this ritual representing? Sackcloth, fasting. What are you enacting through this ritual? Anybody want to do a wild guess?
Maybe like a cleansing.
So definitely there's a cleansing, but the sackcloth, the fasting are alluding to something darker. Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
Oh, you said something darker. I was gonna say like humility, but I don't think that has
Even
anything to do.
darker. Remember, when do we wear sackcloth in the Jewish tradition? Ram, you want to try? Mhm.
It's mourning. It's a sense of mourning.
Yes, exactly, right. There's an atmosphere of death, right? When she's fasting when you stop eating, right? And you have this also in the Muslim tradition, right? The fasting represents really bringing yourself down to uh, almost the level of no being, right? You bring yourself down to the level of dust, right? Which is kind of what the sackcloth and the ashes, I believe there's ashes too, right? This is a kind of going down, bringing yourself down to the level of dust, right? It is, like you were saying, Pierre Antoine, a symbol of humility, humility in the sense that I am dust. I am dust and ashes. So the ritual here is not mourning a death, is going through a death, right? Make
So
sure.
it's like suffering, right, Professor? I guess in a way, it's like
Yeah,
suffering to cleanse yourself.
exactly.
Cause like in the Jewish tradition we have Yom Kippur. So like during that time we have to go to the synagogue. We cannot wash our face. We cannot basically take care of ourselves. No leather shoes. Um, Usually they wear Crocs when they go to the synagogue on that day, and that for the whole time they don't eat. That's I guess it's to suffer for your sins, and then once that the shofar rings you can start eating again. It's like to
Right.
renew yourself
Yeah.
basically.
So on Kippur, right, which is the holiest day of the year in the Jewish tradition, it's the day of repentance. People kind of go into this death state, and then they are reborn into the new year, right? So the whole ritual she's doing is really the enactment of going into death and coming back out a new person, right? This is what is actually going on. It's not somebody has died or somebody will die. It is her going intentionally into death and arising a queen, right? Now, where did we see this? Someone going intentionally into death for 3 days. Anybody remember? We've talked about this. Alim.
Would it be Anana and Dumutsi, where Dumutsi went to the underworld and then came back, and then the whole renewal happened?
Yes, except you forgot. First, Inanna went in the underworld, right? Remember? You forgot. Yes, remember, she goes into the underworld for a total of 7 days, but she stays 3 days, right? She stays 3 days in the underworld and then emerges different woman, and then she throws Dumutsi there, right? Also, right? Remember, she puts him down from his high throne, right? So there's a shift. But Inanna went down, same thing. She goes into this state of death and emerges a different woman, right? And so we have here something deeply symbolic going on, right? If you're familiar with the culture, with the worship of Ishtar, right, who is the same as Inanna, is the same goddess, right? And Ishtar also, the stories talk about her going down into the underworld for 3 days, dying, right, becoming, remember, a piece of rotting flesh on a hook, right? That's really what the description, if you recall the text, right? And then she's brought back out. So we are here in this context. So I want to go a little bit now, do a little bit of psychoanalysis, right? Go into a little bit, apply this story psychologically, right, to a woman's journey. And so what we're learning here, right, is that before a woman can really become a woman, right, she has to go through this dark night. And here it's in the context of a relationship, right? There are many ways we can go through dark nights as women, right? But in the context of a relationship, what the text is telling us is that there will be a dark night. And if you don't go, if there is no dark night, and you're not able to go through it, you will not emerge as the full woman that you're meant to be, right? There's here a kind of projection as to what the feminine journey looks like, right? Starts out very naive, you're pure, you're sweet, you're passive, and then you enter the dark night in your relationship or in whatever else you're dealing with. And what the text is saying, 3 days, is implying if you're capable of crossing this dark night, you will emerge a completely new woman, right? And so that's what we're learning here. Anytime, right? And this is a very encouraging for women, right? If you're going through any time, and you will, right? I can promise you, you all the women in this class will go through a dark night, either in their relationship or with their children or anything else, right? Or career, right? If you are capable, if you have the courage to face the dark night like Esther does, right? And we'll see, she hesitates. It doesn't come easy. She doesn't right away want to face it, right? But if you have the courage to face it, you will emerge a completely new person, right? And so that's what we're seeing here, right? She's entering this, and now here's where we can see the shift. When she says, if I perish, right? In other words, I am facing the situation and I'm going to throw myself completely at it. I don't even know the outcome. I am sacrificing everything. I am risking everything. I'm putting everything on the line, but I'm going through with this. At that moment, you're entering the dark night and you're then able to emerge, right? But you cannot enter the dark night if you're not willing to lose everything, right? And this is what we're learning. So we'll talk more about it in a second. Granik, you want to add something?
Yeah, this is reminding me a lot of Ruth, like sort of how we were talking about her, that she like just goes with Naomi, and you know, if like I'm gonna, you know, die where you die and go where you go, and
Nice.
like,
Yes, there's the
yeah.
same theme of sorry, did you want to finish? Did you have something more to say, Granik?
No, that was it.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, absolutely. Right. She says, "Your people will be my people." Da, da, da. And how does she say it with the death? Granik, remind me.
I forgot the exact words, but I think it was like
Oh, where you will be buried, I will be buried, or something.
yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
And we saw that with Ruth. She walks into her death. Right. She's moving away from going back to her people, finding a husband, starting over. She's moving towards death with Naomi. Right. And so she's willing to enter, to give it all of herself. Right. And yes, Kestenbaum, thank you. Wherever you will go, I will go. She's throwing herself into this direction. And this action of wholeheartedly entering the situation, risking everything, putting everything on the line, this is what creates the transition into royalty, into being a queen, right? So let me break it down. Let me give you some examples, right, of what this looks like for us, right? Um, this is the situation. I'll give you several options, right? This is a situation where, let's start with something easy like studying, and this can be for everybody, right? Of course, everyone can learn from Queen Esther, right? And remember the 3-day death resurrection theme we saw in the book of John, right? So this is a universal theme, right? This notion of how, right? Only if you're capable of going through this death will you have this resurrection. So here we have it with Esther, right? In a feminine perspective, but the book of John was teaching us already that you have to face death if you want to emerge into a completely new being, into a higher version of yourself, right? So this is, okay, so it looks like you're in school, it's difficult, you want to give up, you continue, right? You feel you're wasting time, your family is telling you should be doing accounting, you want to do philosophy, right? Or something that's completely unpractical. Everyone is telling you you're not going to find a job, it's not going to work out, you're not going to make it, but you know this is what you have to do. You're sacrificing any potential future. You don't know where it's going. This is this kind of death, right? Only if you throw yourself into a risky situation, you don't know how it's going to end, but you're there completely, it's very scary. You don't have any certainty, right? A lot of us, we opt out of a career because it's so uncertain. right? Not knowing that throwing yourself completely in the career can be life transforming, right? And you always emerge stronger, right? So it can be in a relationship, obviously, here is the case, right? And you're on the fence. You don't know, should I go? Should I stay? Should I go? Should I stay? As long as you're like this, nothing will happen. You're not going to become a queen. You're going to stay a concubine, right? The moment you throw yourself, and by the way, it could mean anything. It could mean I throw myself, I will stay. It can be I throw myself, I will leave, right? Some relationships need us to leave, right? Some relationships need us to stay. It depends. You have to know. But at the moment you throw yourself in one direction, 100%, no plan B, all the apples in the same basket. I'm gonna go through with this because that's who I am. I don't care about the result. I'm gonna live out my own truth, right? Whatever that truth is. That moment, right? When you don't know the outcome and yet here you are, risking your happiness, risking your happiness. We can say that, right? You're risking, people are telling you you're wasting time. You're risking, you're not going to experience this. You're going to miss out on that. Why are you, right, in this, focusing so much in this direction, right? You're risking in a way the life, your happiness, your comfort, right? You're in a way you look like a fool, right? But again, right, this is, you have made this decision. I'm getting off the fence. I'm sticking with this, and I'm going to put all of my being into this. Only then two things will happen. Number one, you will emerge higher version of yourself. Number two, transformation of the whole situation, right? The situation will never transform unless you are capable of entering it with your whole being. No plan B. Or exiting it with your whole being. Depends, right? Again, there's situations that it's harder to leave, right? The right thing to do is to leave, right? And again, this is risky. You're afraid. What happens when I leave? What happens? Who will take care of me? Etc. Etc. Right? So, there's no dictating what the action is, but how the action is. Are you following? Right? It's not about what you do; it's how you're doing it. Am I doing it wholeheartedly? Right? Without a plan B. This is the price of royalty, of emerging as a queen or a king, right? If you want to see this in general, right? And this is the price of any type of transformation. There will be no transformation in your situation unless you get off the fence and invest your whole being. And this is something, by the way, which is countercultural. Our culture, I really think, and I'm noticing, seems to be completely incapable of total investment. We are incapable of passion. We want a little bit, it doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to go here. Oh no, it's too hard. I'm going to go here. Here we are bouncing, right? From thing to thing. We are so afraid of losing our small happiness, our small comforts, our small life, that we miss out on the greater life, the greater happiness, right, that we could have if we had the courage to go through our dark nights. We don't. We have a dark night, we run away back into the day, right? So our civilization, me included, right? It's not just your generation, it's mine. Everybody alive right now, right? We're really scared of pain. We're scared of dark nights. We don't want to suffer, right? And so anytime there's a dark night, instead of going through and investing and putting all of your being into the situation, we run away, right? And so that's what we're learning here. And that's what we are missing out on, right? Queen Esther, if she had backed off, she would have remained a concubine. She would never have been any more than some, Barbie doll type woman. Is just pretty, nothing left to her, right? But because she stepped into this dark night with her whole being, risking everything, that's how she transitioned, right? Stage, go ahead.
No, I got a, I guess, hypothetical question. So you're saying that if our civilization in general, if we actually did what you're saying, you think that we would be much more advanced than we are?
We would be more advanced, I think, in the sense of, just simply in the sense of entering life. We would be more alive. We would have entered more deeply into life. Most of us remain on the surface of life because we are so afraid to suffer, right? And we never.
You mean I'm sorry. You
Yeah.
mean spiritually?
just even existentially, right? I mean,
Oh, okay.
right, even existentially, we remain on the surface of life because we are so afraid to suffer, right? What Queen Esther is doing is penetrating into life, into the darkness, right? And emerging powerful, right? Powerful goddess, like I would say, right? So we just existentially we're missing out. Obviously, spiritually too, right? Because what Esther is doing is faith, right? She's entering without knowing, but because she feels is the right thing to do, and then she's emerging a higher version of herself spiritually too, right? So on all levels, spiritually, existentially, psychologically, we stay on the surface, right? We are incapable, I believe, as a culture, of passion, right? We have a lot of emotions, but passion, where you throw yourself and you don't care and you will continue crawling. Let me give you an example of passion and you will see what I mean. There's a beautiful, well, it's not a beautiful story. It's a poignant story in the, I don't even know if it's, I think it's a true story actually. This was a violinist who was imprisoned in a concentration camp, in one of those concentration camps like Auschwitz. And he was playing, he continued to play to encourage the inmates, and he would create a lot of joy for them, and he would play for them, and it started to get on the nerves of the Nazis. So they're like, if you continue playing, we're gonna cut off one of your limbs. And he was like, and he just continued, right? He had to do it. He knew that that was his task, to encourage the fellow inmates, right? And so they started cutting off his limbs. Leg, he continued. Second leg, he continued. Then they cut off one arm. And here he is, right? Two arms cut off, and he's just still trying to continue to play with his broken limbs, right? So this is what it means, right? And it's kind of a gorish example, but this is how it feels at times. I imagine myself with no limbs left, crawling to the finish line, right? I don't know if any of you have gotten to that point yet, where you have nothing left and you're crawling through because you don't even know, because you have chosen this and there's no turning back, right? This is what passion means, right? You don't know if you're going to make it, and yet you continue, because it's a question now of integrity, who you are, of living in your truth, right? So, right, that's the idea here. And this is something that Esther is finally capable of doing. And this is why you see the shift. And then you see her putting on her royal robes, right? And that's when we see that she has now emerged as a woman. And now the time is ready for the sacred marriage. No sacred marriage, right? So, Alim, sacred marriage is not a one-time thing in the bedroom, right? Sacred marriage is a gradual thing, right? Where you individuate as a woman, you learn to enter the relationship as a woman, as a full-fledged woman, and then the transformation begins to occur, right? Okay, so there was a couple of things in the chat. Thank you, Rubinov. Yes, the pianist. Same context as that story, yeah, that I was telling. Okay, any questions on this? I feel like we're going way too fast. Any questions on this before I go into the seduction of Ahash, whatever his name is? Or any comments on this? Dark night, right? This text seems to be inviting us, right, to not be afraid of our dark nights, and to really penetrate those dark nights and give it all we've got, right? Even if you don't know the relationship going to work out, you give it all you've got. You don't know that child is going to survive, grow up normal, you give it all you've got. You don't know if the career you chose is going to pan out, you give it all you've got, right? This is something that we have forgotten. We are so cautious. It has to work out. We have to see that it's going to work out, and then we give it all that we have. We are not capable of giving it all, even if we don't know if it's going to work out, right? And that's what life will ask of you at some point, right? Inevitably, life will ask of you, give it everything, even though you don't know how it's going to pan out. And that's what makes the difference between a concubine and a queen, right? Queen has the courage, the audacity to enter the situation, even though she doesn't know. That's the difference, right? It doesn't take much courage to invest in something you know will succeed, right? Courage is investing in something you're not sure, but you invest because that is who you are, right? Okay, all right. So if there are no further questions, let me get into the seduction of Ahasuerus. Okay, So here we're going to go into what Stage mentioned last time, male psychology. And this is something that I discovered a few years ago about men. So it surprised me. I was surprised because we have such a cliche view of men of being, these tough guys with no emotions. So, so I'll first tell you a little bit. So first of all, a few words about the seduction, and then I'll go into this the emotional aspect of maleness. We're going to talk about that. But first, let's talk about something very interesting that I noticed, right? Notice that the king never really, it's kind of the same as Ruth. Remember how when Ruth was just, helping Naomi, Boaz was nice, but it's only when Ruth spoke to him that he rose to the highest level of his being. Do you remember how Boaz was a nice guy and then he became a redeemer when Ruth asked him to, right? So Ruth in a way was asking him to get to the highest level of his self, right? She was asking him, don't just be a nice guy, be a redeemer, right? Represent God's redeeming action towards me. So we have something very similar here. The king is a nice guy, right? As long as she's submitting, right? But he's unimpressed. You don't sense that there is anything powerful about Esther, right? He's not really into her, to be honest. I mean, 30 days without her means he's not really that into her. She's cute. She looks pretty under the crown. That makes me trophy, right? Trophy wife, cute. But you don't sense really that he's anywhere deeply moved by her or that there is any deep connection between them, right? This happens the moment she begins to challenge him, right? So I want to stop on this a little bit because this is so important. A lot of us, right, as women, we think we have to be kind of, we think that the solution, right, to attract a man's love is to be, kind of how you say it, more passive, more chill, like let anything go by, not make any big stories or drama, right? Be undramatic. And so we kind of like, allow many things to happen that that we don't like, right? But we're doing it so we can look, like we're not too much trouble. And so hopefully by not being too much trouble, we will attract the king's love. Actually, it doesn't work like that. Right? Just put it out of your head. Being not too much trouble is not going to attract any degree of passion or awaken any degree of passion in the king. What starts to awaken passion in the king is challenge, right? So we tend to forget that actually a man loves a good challenge, right? Doesn't like the woman to just be sweet and nice and pretty, right? Of course this is nice, but the man doesn't want the woman to just be gay, right? Wants her to also be naked, right? And so I really see here the king coming alive towards Esther the moment that she challenges him. This is when the king really begins to become involved with her and see her, right? And you see their relationship, how it evolves afterwards. It's we'll talk about that, right? So I want to suggest here, right, that I want to talk here again about what we talked about last time with Ruth, right? The erotic power of a woman, right? Or by which I means the power of a woman's desires, right? The power of her challenging her man, right? The power of that. There is something incredibly seductive, right, in a woman who is capable of challenging a man. Of course, you have to do it the right way, which is what Esther is really good at, right? But it's only when she rises to the level of challenge that the king starts to really take notice, right? And becomes much more how shall I put it, interested in her, right? Aline, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask something that I think you're going to answer. I was gonna say that the king doesn't seem like he has any sense of otherness, as shown by the fact that you have to become mutilated to be even close to him. And also, when Queen Vashti, not only did she like give him his kingship, but like she is like the line of the queens, and yet even when she challenges him even a little bit, like he goes crazy and he's like, get out. So I was confused, like, how does Esther even do this.
Yeah, so you're getting it, right? She knows to challenge him, but how does she do it in a way that actually he accepts the challenge? Because this king is incapable of relating to other people, right? This is a perfect, this is the ultimate narcissistic personality disorder, right? So she challenges him, but this is her genius. She knows how to do it. And this is where I'm going to go now, right? So I'm going there. So let me just make sure you get this, ladies, right? Don't think that by being passive and accommodating all the time is what is going to get you your man, right? There has to be a certain amount of personality in a woman to really attract the man. There has to be a certain amount of challenge, right? Let's check with the men. Men, am I right? Am I on the right track? I have to check with you. What do you think, men? No one's answering. This is not good.
You're asking if guys enjoy a challenge. That's what you're
Yes,
trying to say.
that's what I'm trying to say.
I think it's everyone enjoys a challenge, both genders, because in the beginning, when you get something easy, it's it sounds like fun, but then you're like, what's the purpose? It's not just like playing hard to get. It's like being interesting. Like what can you bring to the table that has value?
Okay, great.
Whether it's like money, whether it's intelligence, and that's just for both sides. That's not just um like I'm not trying to be specific for gender. Some people have money, some have intelligence, some have laughter, and nobody is born with all traits or qualities. So some stick out more than others, and some appreciate traits more than others. So
Good. Granik, you say either one can be good. Now, do you mean all the time or do you mean a shift between the two?
Yeah, I guess I mean either, yeah, I guess depending on the context, I think it could be like helpful to have sort of a person who will go along with what you like. If you're sort of moving in a certain direction and need their help, it could be really useful to have someone who will kind of go along with your energy. But I think like then also there are a lot of times where like you obviously want to, like two people are not going to have exactly the same opinion or the same value on things in any matter really. So yeah, so definitely there are times where like it's definitely more honest and more authentic to have this challenge.
Good. Okay, very good. Stage. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with Ruben over there. Uh, there's a tennis player. I don't know if anybody knows her. Her name is Azarenka. She actually said something very interesting. She said, "If it were easy, it would be boring."
Yes.
So a challenge is necessary sometimes, especially for a person to, like Ruben said, to have feel like they've accomplished something. And I mean, if you have all the money in the world and take everything you want, that that's just like she said, it's boring. It's That's why I feel like a lot of rich kids get bored of it all. The father buys this, the father buys that, the mother buys a pony for her daughter's birthday. It's never have any challenge. You're bored with life, and that's how you end up in prison. That's how you end up
Okay.
doing things that you should not be doing because you want to challenge you in yourself to an extent.
Okay, good. You hear that, ladies? Right? I have a friend right now. She's in a relationship and extremely very passive, right? And she told me, well, I just want to come across as chill, right? I don't want to. And I was telling her, no, you need to put a little spice. You can't just be always nice, and accommodating, right? So this is what we're learning here, right? Both Boaz and Hasuerus, right? Kind of, awaken something in them, something in them comes alive, right? When the woman challenges them. Now going into Ali, right? How do we do it in a way that the challenge is well received and not pushed back like with Vashti, right? So here's where I want to spend a little time talking, forgive me, males, talking about you and your presence, not good. But you will confirm or infirm what I said, right? I want to talk a little bit about male psychology, which we women are not aware of. And I need to talk about this so we can be a little more tolerant, right? So I learned this in Chinese philosophy. So I'm going to talk about it, and I also mention it in my book if you've read it already. But Chinese philosophy talks about, you're familiar with the concepts of yin and yang, right? Everybody? Let me see. Put your hand on the screen if you know the concepts of yin and yang, right? So yin in Chinese philosophy is the feminine aspect. So yin and yang are the two forces of the universe, right? Yin is more feminine, yang is more masculine. Yin is more hidden, secret, cold, moist, right? This is all the yin. Yang is more out there, exuberant, hot, dry, right? Energy. So everything in life is both yin and yang, right? You have night and day, winter, summer, you have male, female, right? All of this, right? And so she's saying we also have in our body, so Chinese medicine, right, says we also have in our bodies organs that are yang and organs that are yin, right? So she talks about the gender difference, or Chinese philosophy, and I say she because an article I read by a Chinese practitioner. So this article was saying the sexual organs are different in the male and the female, and she says it goes as follows. So for the woman, the yang organs is when you look at the chest, that's yang, very expansive, out there, exuberant, right? We're completely there. But the sexual organs are yin, hidden, secret, shy, and so forth. For the male, however, and this is where it gets interesting, is the opposite. So we already know sex organ for the male is out there, yang, exuberant, and so forth. But now's the part you want to remember. The heart of the male is yin. Let me write this down because this is such a profound truth. That it really knocked me out. The heart of the male is yin, right? His sexual organs are yang, and we know this, but heart is yin. What does that mean? It means the heart of the man is hidden, secret, vulnerable, right? Fragile. Our hearts, out there, we express ourselves. We can tell the man we love him without, dying of fear, right? We can go through breakups without coming apart, right? We have a much stronger heart. It's more yang, right? The male, however, is much more yin. And so just like us also sexually, we're more yin. It's more easy to hurt us sexually, right? We're more vulnerable. For the male, it's more resilient, right? In terms of sexuality. So what we're learning here is the man's, so did you follow a little bit? Are you seeing what I'm saying? Put your hand in the screen if you're following. Okay, so if the man's heart is yin, it changes everything. It makes a lot of sense, meaning the man's heart is secretive, hidden, vulnerable. And so in a way, just like we women need sexual foreplay, right? We need a lot of foreplay in order to open up in the sexual organ, in the yin part of ourselves. We need a lot of foreplay in order to be able to open up. Likewise, right? The man needs a lot of emotional foreplay before he can open his heart, right? So we expect the man, right, to go slow with us, to take it easy, to, cover us with kisses before we open up sexually, right? But then we go around, right, brutalizing the man psychologically and then expect him to tell us he loves us, right? So just like we need a lot of physical foreplay for sexual intimacy, right? The man needs a lot of emotional foreplay for emotional intimacy. And so what does this emotional foreplay look like, right? In a way, this is what Esther is doing. This is why it's so powerful what she's doing. She's creating emotional safety for the king so that his heart can open. And once his heart is open, she speaks. That's her genius, right? She doesn't speak. She doesn't come up and, in the whole court and be like, do the head thing and the snapping, right? And be like, how could you do this, you stupid idiot, right? No, she creates this whole emotional safety. Emotional foreplay, I call it, so that he begins to relax and his heart begins to open. And that's why when she begins to speak, and we'll see again what she says and how she says it, he listens. Whereas Vashti, no emotional foreplay. She basically told the king to fuck off, right? That's basically what she did, right? And so the king now is humiliated. Esther, on the other hand, she knows how to create this, right? So we're going to look at the things she does, and that's her. Remember, the genius of Esther is in the ke, right? The with, and that's where she's really shining, right? Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I caught like the first half of like emotional foreplay and how Esther uses it. What is like the second half? I'm sorry.
What second half? There's only that. What do you mean?
Oh, meaning like in terms of because I got up to the part where like Esther does emotional foreplay, but how does that play into the king is what I mean.
So when she does that, his heart is able to open, right?
Okay.
And at that moment, she speaks, and so she is received, right? If she had spoken
Okay.
too soon, or when he's busy, stressed, annoyed, angry, it's not gonna go right. Or drunk, for that matter. When Vashti spoke, he was drunk. She's not gonna work, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going on. So Esther really, I think, her genius is understanding the male psychology instinctually, right? She didn't
Mhm.
study psychology. She's very instinctive, but she instinctively knows I have to prepare this man, right? I have to create emotional safety, and then I'll be able
Okay.
to speak. Now we can understand maybe better why she does two banquets, right? We'll talk about that, but I think
Okay.
we can already see where she's going. Okay, so far, let me check with my males. How far am I from the truth? Where am I? Does this sound plausible? Am I making sense? Granik is going yes. Okay, Kestenbaum agrees. Stage, you can't just go like this. You have to say something. Go ahead, Stage.
Well, I agree to some extent. I mean, one thing that I've noticed is that guys, including myself, honestly, always want to be taken care of like a mother. Okay. I hope I'm speaking for all guys. And uh, I don't know, I was thinking about one example. When you watch sometimes movies and a man comes home from hard days at work and he's totally exhausted and he sits on the couch and he's depressed to some extent, and then his woman comes and caresses him. She says, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" It's like a motherly type of thing, and it's necessary for me personally. It's necessary for, I would say, for every guy to experience that, to have that, to actually, like I said, men have feelings the last time, and right. I think that's actually pretty much. I want to conclude with that.
Okay, good stage. I hope you ladies heard that. That was a really beautiful description of welcoming a man home, right? I mean, when my man comes home, I'm busy doing something else. I'm like, hey. So thank you, Stage. That was actually super helpful, right? This has all to do with what we were talking about last time, the art of receiving, the art of welcoming, right?
Professor, can I say something too?
Yes, Rubina.
I actually agree with Stage on what he said, and some females they look at it like, oh, like I'm not your mother type of thing, like Jennifer Lopez or Beyonce, whatever. They made a song or she made a song, and she said, "I'm not your mom," like when the guy wants these types of things, but
Love
it's
Beyonce.
it's not just like because back in the day in the old times the females would do this, like they would sit home, they would take care of the child, they would cook, clean, or whatever. Nowadays the females think, oh, I'm not gonna sit home and do whatever you want, like it's viewed more like in a feminist type of way because they think it's more of like a power struggle, like a competition. And it's not really a competition, it's just more of like a respect type of way, the guy is the man of the relationship for a reason, Of course he can cook, clean when he gets a chance, but when you come home from work, that's like a special time for yourself, even if you have kids or not, You want to come home, you want the house to be clean, you want food, otherwise you can live yourself and do everything yourself. If that's not the case, if the female doesn't like want to do that, So I agree with State, and it's not just like a type of motherly type of thing. It's more of like a mutual like respect type of thing. Sometimes if the female goes to work, she comes home, yeah, the guy can do the same thing.
Good. Yeah. Let me distinguish briefly. Just 2 seconds, Pierre Antoine. I want to distinguish briefly between mothering, loving as a mother, and loving as a spouse, right? Because very often, right? I think we talked about this last time. We are trained to love our men like mothers, to do things for them, right? And what we're not realizing is that there is a deeper way of connecting, which is to receive, right? From the man, right? Or to create a welcoming space for the man, same thing, right? Or to create emotional safety. Creating emotional safety, you don't have to do a single dish, right? You don't have to cook a single meal, right? To create emotional safety. And so I think I understand where you're coming from, Rubinov, right? But what I want to talk about is a forgotten virtue, right? Especially women who are, yeah, in general, Western women, we're taught to do and do and do, right? We're never taught to receive and enjoy and welcome, right? What Stage mentioned is not hard. The guy comes home, she caresses him, says, "How was your day?" This is all part of the receiving aspect of the woman. So I do want in this class to emphasize less the mother's love, which is also, it's nice to have some of that, right? But ultimately, I believe personally, maybe I'm wrong, I'll test with you right now, I'll ask you. It seems to me that the spouse love, right? The lover's love, where you're welcoming and creating emotional safety, is even more important. Am I on the right track, men? You can wave at me or not, right? The mother is, it's good to have some of the mother, but if you have only the mother, right, she's only bustling around, going in the kitchen, doing all kinds of things all day long, taking care of the kids, doing this, doing that, doing this, and never a single moment taking the time, like Stage beautifully said, to welcome the man in her space, right? So what I mean by the mother figure, I'm saying she's always doing, bustling around, busy, right? No time to relax, invite, welcome, enjoy, right? The presence of her man. So I do want to distinguish these two and encourage the ladies of the class to also develop. It's good to have some of the mothering, right? But it's also very important to have some of the lover, right? Type of love, which is the opposite, right? Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
Oh, you answered my question because I was about to just ask about that, but you answered it. So.
What was your question gonna be?
Oh, it was just gonna be about like, so what is the difference between like mothering type of love and like having that emotional safety, like connection? So you answered it.
Right. So it's good to have some of it. I mean, we do want also our, spouses to be a little bit of a father, but ultimately, right, what the woman is made for is really to love as a lover in terms of the man she's with. Okay, so now let's go look a little bit at this emotional safety she's creating, right? How she is doing this emotional foreplay. So I have 5 points. So let me go briefly over them. Actually, I'll just list them one after the other. Number one, I noticed the banquet. And I used to think so hard, why is she doing a banquet? Why doesn't she just tell him, right? Why she goes through all that trouble of doing not one, but two banquets, right? And remember, the banquets at the time, they're a long thing, right? They last several hours. You have music, dancing, eating, and then eventually the bedroom, obviously, right? So she's treating this guy, right? Twice, right? So this is where I want to talk about a little bit the importance of joy, right? This is something that we women forget very quickly in a relationship. Initially, we're joyful, we're happy. Little by little, life kicks in and we start to become ordinary, right? So the guy comes in, we're like, hey, and there's like nothing on your face that registers joy, right? In fact, a lot of us, life becomes such a burden, we become depressed, or there are so many problems in the relationship, we become sad, depressed, sorrowful, we walk around looking, so what we're learning here is that part of the emotional foreplay, part of what makes a man feel safe emotionally, is a woman's happiness, is a woman's joy, right? So even, right, in a way, if you want the man to open up and to be intimate with you emotionally, if you feel the man is distant, first place you look, is there joy in our relationship? Am I feeling joyful? And by the way, you can be joyful even if the guy is a jerk, right? Joy is something you create in you. Joy is you with, remember the pleasure we talked about last time? That's the joy. You can create your own joy. What kind of woman are you in terms of joy on a scale from 1 through 10? Doesn't matter if you're going through a divorce. Doesn't matter if the guy's cheating on you. Doesn't matter how shitty your kids turned out to be, right? How joyful are you capable of being by yourself, right? Joy is something that is supposed to emanate naturally from you. It's not created from the outside, right? One of the most powerful ways to create emotional safety or to do this emotional foreplay, right, is to be a joyful person, right? When the man senses you're miserable, he will close up. It's automatic. You want the man to close up, be miserable. It's not going to make him open up to come all crying and wailing to him about your problem, right? We tend to think this is how we should do it because we do it with our girlfriends and our mothers and it works. It doesn't work with a man. You come wailing and crying and complaining, shoot, something shuts down, right? The man's heart can only open when he feels that you're happy, that he is making you happy, right? And so in a way, it depends, right? If you want to leave, you leave. If this guy is a total jerk and you want to leave, leave, right? But if you want to give the relationship a chance and you sense that he has become withdrawn and you sense that he has become distant, one of the best ways to recreate the space for that man to open up is to recreate the joy, right, in the relationship. Checking on my men. How far am I from the truth? Am I doing okay? Anything you want to add? Granik, okay. Granik's okay. Okay. I have noticed, right, many times it takes just a woman being miserable for the man to want to leave her, right? Not because necessarily he found someone better, but because he feels, I cannot make you happy, so why am I here? And then the man withdraws and withdraws and withdraws, right? So I've seen this over and over again in relationships where the distance of the man has everything to do with the woman's capacity for joy, right? So that's the first thing that I think Esther really got down. She creates joy. She comes all shining. I mean, she's going through hell. She might die any minute, but she comes shining, right? She doesn't lose her light, her brilliance, and she shows up, right, with her full light and her joy. And this is the first step, right, in creating emotional safety. So first thing you want to do as a woman, if you sense your man has become withdrawn, is to recreate joy, at least in yourself, right? And this is something you can do by yourself. The more you engage in pleasure, we talked about the last time, the more you create time for pleasure, for relaxation, the more you will feel joy no matter what you're going through, right? It takes a very strong woman to remain joyful through the dark night, right? And that's what Esther seems to be capable of. This is her genius, right? So second thing, acceptance. So this is very interesting. Some of you asked, why did she invite the king and Haman, right? Why she invites them both? And I thought about that too. I was like, why she invites them both? Of course, politically, there's some reason maybe, but I'm looking at this like this. Haman represents the dark side of the king, right? There's the king and there's Haman, who is totally empowered by the king, right? Haman is the other side of the king, which the king refuses, by the way. King doesn't like, when he realizes Haman is a jerk, he's like, oh, I don't know you, right? So I would like to look at this more psychoanalytically, right? Haman represents the dark side of the king, the side of the king which can become enraged, which can become murderous, which can become dangerous, violent, right? And she invites them both. This is so beautiful, right? She invites them both. The second way to create emotional safety is to accept your man completely, not just the spirit, but the clay, right? Don't just accept his qualities, his amazing, intelligence, or his beautiful looks, right? Accept also the part of him which is fragile, which is flesh, right? Which is clay, which is vulnerable, which is not doing so good, right? The ability, if the man, right, the ability to make the man feel like he's totally accepted and understood in both his spirit and his flesh, right? In both his breath and his clay, right? You see what I'm talking about when the creation story, right? You have clay and breath, right, together. Breath is the divine part of the man. The clay is the human part, right? Vulnerable, fragile part, right? She invites both, right? And some of you might be wondering, well, how do I accept, a man who is violent or abusive or, who's unfaithful, right? How do you accept that, right? The key for this is to get to the pain behind the transgression, right? Everything a man does, which is violent or hurtful, is usually you can trace it to some kind of pain or wound that that man has gone through. Sorry, guys, for being so open about your psychology, right? Anything a man is doing, there is a wound behind it, right? Anything a man is doing to hurt you, you can trace back to something that someone did to them, right? And so seeing the wound is one of the ways to accept the clay or the flesh, right, of the man. And so this is the second thing she shows herself. I mean, this is again her genius. She's able to welcome both, to hold both, to embrace both, right? Without necessarily letting the Haman get away with it, right? Notice she's not gonna, Haman in the end dies, right? She's not gonna just accept both. But she in a way she's accepting both and moving forward, right? We'll see later how she does that. So that's the second thing she's doing, right? And then number 3, the 2 banquets, right? This is again her, right, waiting until the right time, creating the safety until she feels he's ready, right? So many times we want to talk and we want to talk right away to the guy, or we talk to him when he's still pissed, or we talk to him when he's busy or stressed, and of course, or when he's drunk like Vashti, right? There is an art in figuring out when to talk and when not to talk. And this is what makes Esther, by the way, a wise woman, right? Remember, she's called a wise woman by the Talmud. Wise, why? Because she knows when to talk. She doesn't just know what to say, she knows when to say it. And this is a third thing, right, that Esther is able to do, right? Last thing, we saw this with Ruth, and I'm glad we get to there before class ends so that you can all get it, right? She is combining the K and the neged when she speaks, right? Notice, if I have found favor, big humility, if it pleases you, right? Here she is being all, very humble, very gracious. She's not expecting it. She's not forcing it. She's not complaining. If I have found favor, humility, and then audacity. Let an order be dispatched. Chapter 8, verse 5, right? This is when she's asking him, telling him what decrees to make to save her people, right? So look at the combination. This is the art. She's both humble, so she's created the emotional space masterfully, courageously, right? She's shining in the dark, right? Ishtar, right? Shining in the dark. She's welcoming both the dark side and the bright side of her king, right? She's embracing both. She's holding them together. She knows when to speak, and then when she speaks, she artfully combines the K and the neged. If it pleases you, she's imperative. Let an order be dispatched, right? Same as Ruth. Remember Ruth? Same thing, right? She's very humble, and at the same time, she's ordering him around. You are a redeemer, right? Spread your wings over me, for you are a redeemer. This is a combination again of humility and audacity, right? And this is what, right? I hope you're seeing now how Esther, right, in a way was able to vanquish Haman even before Haman died. This is how she vanquishes this dark side of the king, right? This is her talent, right? And now we are really at the threshold of the sacred marriage. Any questions so far before I continue? Okay, so let's look at the result of this, right? We can see now that he's listening. She succeeded, right? The last part I want to say is the redemption of the world, right? And so this, for me, there is a shift here, which is so powerful and which is so unprecedented in the history of the biblical world, right? I see some of you are leaving, so bye everybody. Thank you. Make sure you get the ending of the class. This moment where she is making decrees and the king is making decrees, right? They're both making decrees. This is unprecedented, right? You don't have anywhere in the ancient world a woman ruling at the side of the man at the same level. This is very different from Vashti, who wasn't ruling or making decrees. She just was imitating the party. He was having a party, well, I'll have a party, right? This is different. She's creating a new world. Vashti was just trying to compete in one world, right? Esther is creating a new reality. She's creating a new world. She is given such power, right? Such power arises, right, out of her after this death she goes through, right? And you have a complete shift. Of course, you're familiar with the story, right? The fate of the Jews is reversed, right? They're allowed to defend themselves, and they win, right? They're able to defend themselves and vanquish their enemies. You have a whole shift here, and you have yeah, and so you have here cosmic redemption, right? That comes from this woman finally rising to her full individuation as a woman and knowing how to speak to her man, right? This is the problem with us women in our civilization. We know how to rise, but we don't know how to connect. This is again coming back to what my view is the flaw in feminism, right? We know how to rise, we know how to compete, we even know how to speak, but we don't know how to speak too. This is the problem, right? We are saying many things, but no one is listening, right? We have to learn not only to be naked and rise and challenge, but we have to learn to challenge in a way that we will be heard. And this is where I feel we are still needing progress, and we can still learn from Queen Esther, right? Ram, you have something to say. Go ahead.
Actually, yeah, I have to go to another class, but I kind of missed the beginning of the class because I was in between joining and get stuck in the group. So I wanted to find out about the extra credit that's to read
So Ram, read the room. Am I done? No.
No, I know I have to go to another class. That's the reason I'm asking.
Okay, put those things in the chat. You know, don't interrupt the lecture.
I'm sorry.
And I'll respond to it, or email me, right? Of course.
I will. Okay, I will. Thank you.
Better than interrupting those.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Bye.
Guys, please learn. This is a learning opportunity for you. A lot of you are doing this. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Ram. See you later. Okay, guys. So that's the story, right? So there's no test, sadly, on Esther. I would have liked to hear your feedback. But I want to say one more tiny thing, since we have a little time, on the month of Adar, which is the month of Purim, right? Which is the holiday that Esther creates, the holiday of Purim. In the Babylonian tradition, there's a myth, right, that says that during this month of Adar, this is the time when Marduk, right, the god Marduk slayed, we talked about this, right, Tiamat, the great snake, right? And after that, right, Marduk created order in the universe. So that's in the Babylonian mythology. Here we have a reworking of that. You have Ishtar, right, who slays, or Esther, who slays Haman, right? And again creates, right, cosmic redemption. So you have some parallel here between Babylonian culture and this biblical story, right? You have now, it's a woman. Instead of a man slaying a woman, Tiamat is a woman, right? You have a woman slaying this man who represents the dark masculine, right? So in a way, what Esther is doing is slaying the dark masculine and allowing the positive masculine to be awakened, right? So that is, again, this notion of the sacred marriage, right? Okay, good. All right, any questions on anything I said? And then we can go over some details about the final project and such. Good. All right, there's like 5 of you left. Good. All right, so for those who are listening or watching the recording later, so final project, so right now you don't have anything else to do if you've done the test on the Book of John. All you have left is the final project, which is reading the book on the Song of Songs, writing the review on Amazon, and then giving me a copy in the Google Drive so I can see that you did it. This is all due May 25. Olivera, what's your question?
I have spoken to you before, and you say you would open the possibility to write about Esther for extra points for people.
Yes, thank you. Okay, great. Yes, if you want extra points, I would like an essay. Remember the spiritual essays you did, which are kind of free, right? You kind of write something that struck you in the book and with regards to your own journey as a woman or whatever, or spiritual journey. is that the essay is 1.5 pages single spaced. The usual essay you do, if you give me one for Esther, I give you extra credit. So anybody in the class who wants some extra credit, you can do an essay on what we learned on Esther. Does that work, Olivera?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions before we part? Okay.
Yes, I have a question.
Binod.
It's about my essays or exams. You told me that on Blackboard I didn't